Hello, and thank you for stopping by Trauma and True Crime. Okay, you guys, I am bursting at the seams. I've been wanting to address this with you all for weeks now, but in all honesty, I had to go back and rewatch the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, especially their testimony, because I missed several parts of it while the trial was on. And also, I'm not really a news creator. I do analysis, so I didn't really find it imperative for me to watch in real time and do updates in real time. I was really looking forward to doing what I'm about to do now, which is a deep dive and some very specific analysis on Amber's personality disorders and how they played into a massive publicity stunt that really failed miserably. So let's get into it. Most of the sane world knows that Amber is the one who lost the case for herself, and I want to show you why. Here is my conclusion about what Amber did with this trial. She used a very sophisticated set of disordered personality traits to exploit multiple people in institutions with a goal toward getting the kind of public sympathy and response and acceptance that Johnny is getting right now. And I can feel her anger coming through the social media airwaves as we speak right now. It all backfired badly, and this is all on Amber. For the rest of this video, I'm going to drill down into that conclusion, starting with Amber's very sophisticated disordered personality traits. And this trial gave us a rare but valuable glimpse into the most updated methods for evaluating and diagnosing people's mental illness, and it was brought to us by the testimony of Dr. Shannon Curry. It's really rare to see a forensic psychologist explain all of the traits of these personality disorders in such a vivid, current way with such a high profile case, especially in a way that the general public can really understand what she's talking about. She did such a good job that I've taken her explanations and put them side by side with clips of Amber that show each aspect of Amber's behavior that Dr. Curry is describing. That will set the stage for explaining how Amber attempted to use those traits, harness those traits, along with her celebrity, and whether it was subconscious or conscious, to exploit every institution that she had at her disposal. But before I jump into this, side-by-side clip reel, I'd like to give a brief overview of my background and experience in case you've never watched a video on my channel before, just so you understand that I'm speaking from a very informed perspective. I've spent over 25 years working with the mainstream media, and many of those years was to represent people like Apple founder Steve Jobs, the founders of and the CEO of Google, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, George Lucas of Star Wars fame, and many other high-profile figures in tech. So I'm pretty well versed in, and some in entertainment as well. So I'm pretty well versed in knowing how famous people work with the media. And the other thing to know about me is that I have a severe case of PTSD. And before I was correctly diagnosed with that PTSD, it was so severe that some of my symptoms really came out looking like someone with border personality disorder. So for a bit of time, I was diagnosed with BPD, and I believed that I had BPD, but after deeper evaluations, more the kinds of evaluations that you saw Dr. Curry describing, it became clear that my symptoms were a result of long-standing PTSD. And I can confidently tell you that my day-to-day personality traits do not align with that of somebody with borderline personality disorder. Now, from my perspective, Amber abused the fact that the mental health field is not only confusing, but also the fact that the general public has a really shallow, one-dimensional understanding of each type of mental illness diagnosis. She tried to capitalize on the knowledge that PTSD can sometimes present as a personality disorder, and she may have some PTSD from the trauma she endured as a child. I touched on that on a previous video, but she's trying to sell the idea that it was her relationship with Johnny Depp that gave her this PTSD, and it gave her the kind of PTSD that she overacted and over dramatized on the stand during this trial. And honestly, the fact that she is capable of trying to deceive an entire country of institutions that she has PTSD rather than a very disordered set of personality traits is testimony to how very deep her toxicity goes and how uncaring she is about how that ruse will negatively affect everybody around her and spill out into ripple effects to people who have PTSD. But let's jump right into this side-by-side comparison so I can illustrate this more for you. And then on the other side, we'll talk about how she put those traits to use to manipulate institutions.
Well, there were a number of characteristics that were consistent with the eventual diagnoses, but some of the primary characteristics, and I'm going to try to condense 25 pages here, were essentially externalization of blame.
5 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms I went
to avoid talking to me, to avoid
escape
working it out. That's
to
the
escape
problem.
the fight.
You don't
See how she turns it around on how it's all the blame is on him for how they are handling their fights. She has clearly no recognition of the fact that turning violent changes everything and that that's not a fair fight.
escape the fight. You escape the solution. No. You escape the solution. No. You escape figuring it out. We cannot work it out if you run away.
The pontification is just over the top.
Bathroom every time.
Tending to have a lot of inner hostility that is attempted to be controlled.
Ignore everything. You take me for granted. You're ignoring everything that I do for you. You make me sound terrible. You talk about me in a terrible way. You do not fight for me. And then you want to sit here and make me sound so terrible to be around.
Tendency to be very self-righteous, but to also deny that self-righteousness and to judge others.
If I split on you, all those times that I thought about doing it, we would not be here. And I stayed.
See what a good person I am. I stayed with you even though you are so horrible to me.
It's tougher. You know, that's stronger. I'm stronger. It is easy to run. It is easy to run away from problems. It is easy to take that out and say, well, that's the easiest. That's the best safest. That's the safest way out. I'm not saying we should get a physical altercation. I never want to be in that.
Critically against these sort of high standards for moral value, but also to deny doing that. Essentially to claim that one is very non-judgmental and accepting and yet very full of rage, really.
Last night, I'm just as guilty. I give you that. But I have been primed and conditioned. At this point, I thought I'd never get over Toronto. It hurt so bad. I got fucked over so bad and I did not do anything.
This is another big thing. The fact that you hurt me, and I'm quoting Amber's brain right now, the fact that you hurt me so bad means I get to hurt you worse and not recognize that I've hurt you worse.
I didn't stoop at all.
Externalization of blame, a lot of inner anger and hostility. Sometimes that anger among these groups with similar scores, these people might have that anger kind of explode out at times.
Help me do that, give that to you. But I can't give it to you if you always let me down and fuck up and forget.
Because I give you a time limit.
That's what you're fucking ignoring. That's the really fucking crazy thing that I cannot understand. The
I wish I could go back and count how many times she called him crazy.
Is
both in these audios and on the stand.
So fucking deep that you are able to tell me right now all of this and mean it. How can you say that to me and ignore that 90% of the time what that bam 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 is you're escaping me like I'm some sort of like vicious harping bird.
They tend to be very passive aggressive.
Stability would mean more stability with him and his struggles with drug and alcohol use.
Did you catch that? Let's look at that again, okay? Watch this. Watch how practiced this pretend slip up was.
Drug and alcohol abuse. Use. Struggles with drug and alcohol abuse. Use.
She's such a terrible, terrible actress. And let's not forget the poop scandal. Is that not the most passive aggressive bullshit you've ever heard?
They may be self-indulgent, very self-centered.
I felt like this man knew me and saw me.
Now, I want to remind you right here that this is a response to the question, how did you feel about Johnny? Okay? It wasn't, how did Johnny make you feel? It's, how did you feel about Johnny? And now listen to the perspective from which she gives her answer. It's all about how he makes her feel.
In a way that no one else had. I felt he understood me. I felt he understood
her.
Where I came from. I felt that, like, when I was around Johnny, I felt like the most beautiful person in the whole world.
Oh, he made her feel beautiful.
You know, it made me feel seen, made me feel like $1 million.
All about how he was to make her feel.
Manipulation tactics to try to get their needs met, very needy of attention, acceptance, approval.
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's one.
Just, okay, look at how she is mugging for the jury. This was, as you may recall, this was the first set of questions that she got when she was facing the jury. And throughout her entire testimony, she played the entire time to the jury. No matter what question she was asked, she answered to the jury. And it was among the most unnatural things I've ever seen in my entire life. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to watch her play to the jury and then look up and sneak glances at them to see if she can register whether she has affected them in any way. It's all about, did I affect them? Did I change them? And here she's seeking their approval and validation by, acting really humble and honored to be a mother now. And, and to be, I'm a mom, it's like, I'm a mom.
And what is your profession?
That right there where she goes, that was really, 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 really phony to me.
I am an actor, mostly. Okay.
And here she's attempting to be humble by just calling herself a mere actor, mostly. But remember that by this point in time, she has weaponized multiple institutions to appear in a certain way. Oh, I'm just an actor.
And so they can present as very fair and balanced, but in actuality, they really might be very judgmental of others and unaware of problems in their behavior and their thinking.
I'm not going to validate my actions last night. I feel very bad for how I reacted. I'm not start screaming until you have fucking said all the shit. You poke an animal enough, it is eventually, it doesn't matter how friendly it is, how cool. I've been cool for so long.
That's her justification.
I have not done this.
It's instability in personal relationships. It's instability in their emotions. It's instability in their behavior. And it's instability in their sense of self and their identity. And that instability is really driven by this underlying terror of abandonment.
Now is the fucking time.
It's like a
I
primal
need to know
terror.
if you're going to be there. I want promises. I told you that at the beginning of this conversation. I need promises you're going to fucking be there. I need promises that this is important to you. Not when it's easy, when it's hard too. This is something you'll fight for. That this is something that's sacred, that neither of us throw out every fight.
A lot of times they read into things that they perceive as being a slight to them or being somebody intending to harm them that actually isn't happening. They'll exaggerate it, and they'll explode. They'll react in this heightened manner that is just exhausting for their partners.
Did you know?
You said divorce last night.
I said that, yeah.
No, you said divorce. You actually said the word divorce. I'm sorry.
So
Just wanna be
I don't
honest.
remember. I'm not being dishonest.
No,
That's where you need to slow down.
See, it went
You
from
don't have
that
attack
to
my
that
character just because I
within
didn't remember
second,
one
like a
word.
split second.
Attacking your character.
Insinuating I'm not honest is an insult to my character.
And it was all because she perceived that he was doing something that he didn't do.
No. I said, I'm sorry. I just wanted to be honest.
One of the hallmark characteristics of histrionic personality disorder is sort of a overly dramatic presentation. We call this impressionistic speech. So it tends to be very flowery. It uses a lot of descriptive words like magical, wonderful.
I said this to you at the beginning of this conversation. You were my favorite person in the whole world. You were the most magnetic, shining, beautiful, interesting, dynamic person I had ever met in my life. It would be so easy to walk away from this bratty thing that you do.
And it can go on for quite some time, and yet it really lacks any substance. So at the end, you're left wondering what was just said.
Good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind, sweet, velvety love.
Velvety. I want to thank the creators who uploaded these, the audio clips. I'm going to link to them in the comments below. There's far more examples where that came from. I just don't have enough time to put them all in a video. Maybe, you know, if you want to see more examples of this, you want to see more nuanced examples of this, let me know in the comments below and I'll do a whole separate video. But I just really wanted to give you a clear idea of how she represents these traits in these diagnoses. Consistent with this diagnosis are people who are very grandiose, who need to better every one of their own last moves and also better the moves that made by anybody in their circle. She displays this in many, many ways. And I wanted to just go through this kind of brief inventory that I made of the extraordinary, over-the-top measures Amber took to manipulate the press. So first, she obtained a restraining order from the court that she knew would get press attention, even if she didn't alert them ahead of time. But we now know that she did alert them ahead of time. So number two is she did alert the press to the fact that she would be in court that day, and it seems quite obvious from the slip up that she made during her deposition. She had knowledge of the fact that TMZ was alerted. Now, third, she also leaked a video that ended up in TMZ's hands, putting Johnny in a bad light, the famous him slamming cupboards and stuff like that. So this was leaked to the press. Amber declared on the stand that she had nothing to do with it, but in her mind, I hear her saying, well, I didn't press the button, but I knew about it. I'm not the one. I didn't send it. I didn't send that, so I didn't do it. That's how she's justifying in her mind, saying that she had nothing to do with it, but the circumstantial evidence in the trial shows me that she either did it herself or had clear knowledge that it was being done, okay? Fourth, she teamed up with the ACLU to become a spokesperson for survivors of domestic violence. I mean, this is virtue signal city. And again, would she have had that kind of access? Would she have had that ability to become a spokesperson in that way without her connection to Johnny Depp and the things that afforded her? Fifth, she wrote and promoted an op-ed in the Washington Post using this new ACLU affiliation. And she apparently, I can't verify this, I just recently heard this, that she was also doing speaking engagements to the tune of, I don't know, some 5-figure sum that was being given to her by the ACLU to speak as an ACLU spokesperson on this topic. That is deep exploitation. Knowing what we know now about this verdict and seeing how blatantly blatantly she lied and gaslit on the stand. Do we really believe that this engagement with the ACLU was warranted? Do we not see that this makes the ACLU look really, really bad for the first time in, on a widespread scale in many, many years? Amber did that. Amber did that with her lies. How were they supposed to know she was lying? Now, 6, before Johnny Depp even filed the lawsuit for the trial that we saw, she fired the first shot. This was revealed in cross-examination with the great Camille Vasquez. She fired the first shot by filing for a request for arbitration. That is firing a shot over the bow. This was about defamation. This was about the things that they were fighting about in the press. So she did take the first shot across the bow. And in my mind, she took the first shot across the bow when she went and got that phony temporary restraining order with a staged makeup face. Now, 7, after Johnny filed his lawsuit, she filed a countersuit asking for double the amount that Johnny was asking. How did she think she was going to be able to justify a $100 million payoff when he only filed for $50 million, and he's by far the bigger star with more power and better track record? That shows you how delusionally grandiose this woman is in her head. She actually thinks that if she wins in a defamation lawsuit, that she should get $50 million more than her husband, whose coattails she's been riding this whole time. Okay? That's just how I see it. Now, number 8. All of this culminated in a courtroom performance, and I'm going to call it that. It was a performance. It was not her just sitting there telling her truth in a courtroom. If Amber Heard were to give that performance in a movie that I watched of her portraying a survivor of domestic violence or whatever, she would not have evoked an ounce of emotion in me. And y'all, I cry at the drop of a hat. I could cry at anything. She was so phony and inauthentic to me that I recoiled in pain watching her overacting, over-explaining, approximating what it's like to have PTSD and to be a survivor of domestic violence. It was painful. And anybody who is also a survivor or, been through a similar situation or the kind of situation that she described brutal, constant abuse, being dragged across the floor by her hair. And every time she told a story, the circumstances would change. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying she was wildly inconsistent. And I don't know how she couldn't have thought that by the time she filed this ridiculous countersuit against Johnny Depp, that she was going to actually pull off the lie of the century, the gaslight of the century, by getting us to believe that she should be looked at the way we look at Johnny Depp right now. It's just, it's preposterous is what it is. And it, again, shows the depth of delusion that is inherent in somebody that has the kind of personality disorders she has, to the degree that she has them. Now, I pulled a clip from one of her most dramatic on-stand performances so we can talk through it together, because I have some points I want to make in context of seeing the clip. So let's watch that. As you're watching this, think to yourself, am I watching somebody who is truly telling a story that she's internalized? Is she really telling her truth in her story? And is she actually feeling the emotions that she's displaying? Or is this a person who has studied, very like an actor would, what it's like to have the symptoms that she's describing? And perhaps she read the part where it says that when you have PTSD, something triggers you, it feels like you're reliving this experience again and it's happening all over again. But she isn't speaking, in my view, she isn't speaking from the perspective of somebody who experienced that and has been living with it and is retelling the story again, as traumatic and horrific as it is. And I grant you that if it really did happen, it was horrific and it was traumatic and it was terrible. But do you think that she read up on what it looks like and what people say when they're in the patterns of abuse? Does she seem like she's actually experiencing the emotion or approximating what that emotion might feel like if she had it? Okay, so let's go.
Johnny beat me up. Thank you, Michelle. If you could bring up defendants 515.
So the reason I picked this clip out is because that was just over the top for me. Let's watch that again. It is, to me, it is so blatant, so over dramatic. She's acting as if this is the first time she's ever seeing this picture, even though it's one that she's probably seen countless times. Remember, they know what discovery they're going to be using in trial, right? She knows. She's been through this multiple times. This is not the behavior of somebody who has, who really knows and has internalized this experience and really lived with it, okay? No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't. And now this. Here is where the lawyers call a sidebar, and it's based on, some evidence that they want to put in. And now Amber is dramatically reading it. I mean, look at her. She does like this
all of a sudden,
sob, and then they don't even enter it into evidence.
That could possibly happen to you. I realize that I wish so much he had said.
Now, the reason I zoomed in on this is because I want you to see how she goes through this entire testimony without ever dropping 1 ounce of fluid from her eyeballs.
Because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before. And
at that point, it looked like she's even trying to squeeze the tears out. She's trying so hard to get into this role and feel what she's talking about, and she's trying to squeeze the water out of her eyes.
I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react.
Let me tell you something. When you have PTSD, you don't have any problem crying on a dime. Let me just guarantee you that, okay?
I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to.
I want to say right here that I truly do think that a lot of what she's saying here is true about their relationship, that she did feel these things, that she didn't want to leave him, that she did love him, that she felt all those things, but she very artfully twists things around such that she's the one being constantly, systematically, brutally abused, and he's the...
And I was in love with... I know you don't come
when
back
it's
from that, not...
now proven in a court of law that it's the other way around.
I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just...
And see, this shows that she knows what right from wrong. She knows you can't hit people. It's almost like she's talking herself into this. Like she's overselling the knowledge that, no, you can't hit people. I know this beyond a shadow of a doubt. while in multiple voice recordings, she admits to starting physical fights.
Hit somebody because I knew I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I would leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up.
This is almost like you can almost see her going through the progression of this role where, well, naturally anybody who was feeling this way now needs to think about leaving. She's studied up on these cycles, and she very often brings up the idea of these cycles and escalation. And she puts all of that cycle on Johnny in a way that might seem very convincing to the untrained ear. And I'm not a therapist, but I do have a trained ear on this kind of thing. Do you see? Okay, where's the tears? Where's the tears? Where's the tears? Where's the tears?
Just looking at the dirty carpet, trying to will myself to get up, to walk out.
I'm a brave person.
Because I knew I needed to.
I'm sorry, I just
and I
don't.
Really slowly, I stood up and I remember looking at him. And
She ruined herself with this testimony. I'm sorry, but this was the most inauthentic, unbelievable thing I've ever heard celebrity do on stand.
And just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying. And, I had never seen it.
Yeah, he starts crying, but you're not.
And it's done. I thought I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, oh, it's okay, or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. I got up, I went to the car, I sat in
Now,
my
do you really believe she says multiple times throughout her testimony that after she was hit, she just stared and she didn't say anything. She just stared. Now, what she's describing is the freeze mode in trauma, okay? In people with traumatic responses to abuse and violence. But after hearing her testimony and after listening to her in all of those audio tapes, being the louder one, the faster talking one, the one that always demands a fight, the one that always means you fight back, do you actually believe that she just stood there and stared at him?
And I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window.
Oh, and here's the dramatic embellishment about how she saw her breath on the window. It's like, again, she's almost seeing a silver screen in front of her eyes, and she's seeing herself played by somebody reliving her story. I truly believe that she has that deep of an illusion about herself.
Seeing my breath on the windshield, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to know what I should do in this moment, because I was heartbroken. And I sat there for a long time, and I eventually turned the key and drove home.
To me, she doesn't look heartbroken. She looks mad and humiliated. That's how she looks. Now, I don't think you need to be a survivor to see through that performance. But if you are a survivor, you probably looked a lot like me when I was watching this performance. Like, my eyes were watering with shame and embarrassment and absolute disgust and humiliation for this woman who was attempting to portray somebody with very recent trauma. How can a person sit there and just flail her body on the stand, all over the place without losing a drop of water from her eyes. Now, there were moments where I felt that she was very authentic, where she came across very natural. Here's an example of that.
The picture of it was the picture we had right before this, is the one I took because it was in the bathroom where I found my clothes in the tub and stuff like that. Okay.
So I do think that Amber could be a sympathetic person if she would just stop lying and stop insulting our intelligence by trying to get us to believe that when we're hearing her in a 4-hour audio tape not once complained to Johnny about physical abuse. Not one time. I listened to this 4-hour recording back to back. I'll link it below, okay? Hi, Steve. Now, the other really unfortunate thing about people with the kinds of personality disorders that she has is that they have such a lack of self-awareness. That they feel completely justified in their behavior. Even if it looks and feels truly awful to us, they don't see it the same way. There's always an explanation for their behavior, and it usually has to do with something that you did wrong or a way that you're not perceiving the world correctly. When what we actually know is that they're the ones that are not perceiving the world correctly. In their minds, everybody else needs to change around them to make them happy. But what they aren't realizing is that it's themselves that need to change to make themselves happy. You know, people like Amber know that being abused is wrong, but they believe they've earned the right to be abusive to the person they're being abusive to because of their standing in the world or because of how they feel that they've been victimized by that other person or the world or for other reason. But they always find a justification to be who they are. And I believe that Amber felt justified in her because in her mind, Johnny was a drunk and an addict and didn't seem to be able to change. And she took personally that he didn't stop for her. I don't feel any sympathy. Actually, I feel anger. Let me change that too. I feel actual anger for how far Amber went to keep her phony persona. But there's a part of me that does watch her performance and feel a twinge of sympathy for her as a human being because she's clearly an empty shell. She depends on other people to do that for her. And when they fail her, she feels like she's died. And that was what her performance displayed on the stand. You know, she used her beauty and her charisma to nab one of the world's greatest stars, greatest actors of all time, and use the same exact powers to then turn against him and try to ruin his life. And, you know, going back to the TMZ photo situation, Amber said something on the stand that to me was very telling of her frame of mind, okay? On the stand, Amber said that she was absolutely shocked that her divorce filing on the 23rd hadn't gone public for several days. And she said it in a way that attempted to sound, you know, relieved that it was still private, right?
So I filed for divorce on the 23rd, I believe. And I thought that when I went in that Tuesday, when we filed for it, remarkably, it managed to stay under the radar. You know, these filings are not private. You can't make them private in California. And remarkably, it had flown under the radar. No one picked up on the fact that I had filed. And as limited as it sounds now, I just wanted as much privacy as we could have. You know, one day at a time, I wanted as much privacy as we could possibly get. And the filing had been missed by TMZ and, you know, these paparazzi outlets and stuff.
But if she was really relieved that it was still private after several days, why would she call her publicist and say, hey, I'm going to go to the courthouse and file a TRO. Please come with me. Now, in my mind, it's legit to, have your publicist tail along with you just in case, if you're a major star like Johnny Depp. But not if you're Amber Heard. And that again shows the grandiosity of her self-image, right? But if you're really trying to manage your privacy, why would you come out with a massive hematoma on your face after spending years and years allegedly hiding it with makeup right up until the day you happen to be going in for a TRO? It just doesn't make sense. That's one of many ways she tried to insult our intelligence. There are a few other ways that Amber exploited the press. This includes, the op-ed she wrote. That was the central issue in the trial, and her enlistment of the ACLU and becoming a spokesperson. The exploitation of the press and the ACLU also involved the exploitation of an entire social media movement. And just all of this to say that people like Amber see the press as just another tool in their arsenal to make themselves feel better about themselves and to look the way that we now see Johnny. I really can't end this video without finally touching on the master class in gaslighting that Amber delivered on the stand. I'm going to show a clip that to me should be entered into the curriculum of every high school health class, okay? This performance is totally indicative of how slick and sophisticated and manipulative the most personality disordered people can be.
Sitting here today, Ms. Heard, you still haven't donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. Isn't that right?
Incorrect. I pledged the entirety of the settlement, $7 million to charity, and I intend to fulfill those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Please,
What was
try
your
to answer
question?
my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another.
But I don't. Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
That's how donations are paid.
Ms. Heard, respectfully, that's not my question. As of today, you have not paid $3.5 million of your own money to the ACLU. Yes or no?
I have not yet.
And as of today, you have not paid $3.5 million of your own money to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, correct?
I have not yet. Johnny sued me.
So as of today, you have not donated, paid $7 million of your divorce settlement to charity, right?
I have not been able to fulfill those obligations yet.
And that's because you did want something, didn't you?
I didn't want anything, and I didn't get anything.
You wanted Mr. Depp's money.
Didn't get it, wasn't interested in it. I loved Johnny, that's why I was with him.
You wanted praise for donating the money, right?
That's incorrect.
You wanted good press.
In general, one does want good press, yes.
You wanted to seem altruistic publicly.
Wasn't my interest. My interest is in my name and clearing my name, and at the time I was being called a liar and my motives were being questioned. I did see it as important to clear that up. I wanted to make a statement to make sure that there was not any doubt that I couldn't be labeled these things just because Johnny was a bigger star and had more publicity reach.
You wanted to remind everyone of your claims of domestic violence against Mr. Depp, right?
No, I wanted to move on with my life.
You wanted to make those claims seem believable.
They are believable. They were
You wanted
believable.
them to be seen, you wanted to be seen, as a noble victim of domestic violence,
I
didn't
have
you?
never wanted to be seen as a victim. Nor have I ever called myself one.
You testified under oath that, quote, the entirety of your divorce settlement was donated to charity, end quote, didn't you?
That's correct. I pledged the entirety.
No. Ms. Heard, my questions. Your counsel will have time to redirect you after. You testified under oath, quote, the entirety of your divorce settlement was donated to charity, end quote.
That is correct. I pledged the entirety.
I'm going to move to strike everything after yes.
Now, beyond that master gaslighting class she gave right there, I found it absolutely infuriating that Amber used Johnny's drug and alcohol abuse to infer that he was crazy, like a crazy, out of control person. Every time the spotlight came to her, she turned it right around and said, "Oh no, well, you're crazy. You were drunk. You were high. You're crazy." And I saw a lot of this in the Depp-Heard relationship. So those are my observations for what they're worth. I definitely hope that a lot of people take a good look at this case and think about how they might not just look at the juicy gossipiness of it being this celebrity couple. Really look at the nuances of this entire situation and say, you know, does that apply to me? Is there something I should be doing differently for myself or other people? And, you know, Amber, she'll probably never see this, but I hope that if she does see this or any other video like it that is putting her own behavior on display, takes the information to heart, not as a criticism, not as a, not trying to shame or humiliate you, but just to get you to look and see that there is one common denominator in all of this, and it's you. It's you, Amber. You did all of this. You did it to yourself. You did it to yourself. You do. It's a Radiohead song. Look it up. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please remember that you never know what is happening in the private lives of other people. So please be kind to everyone everywhere and don't spread hate. Thank you and peace out.